and the city staff here won't be doing a lot of talking. And the idea is to let the residents, have a chance to express themselves and, really tell us, your opinions of things. So before we get started, Councilwoman Souza would maybe want to say some remarks to her constituents here in Ward 2, including myself. So feel free.
Thank you, Bill. And I want to just first start off by thanking all of the city staff for taking the time out of their evening to participate in this, because I know it is after hours, and after a long day, we do want to rest with our families or enjoy the beautiful weather, as so many of are still doing. But I do appreciate you personally all for being here today, and I'm sure my constituents who are on today also appreciate you for taking that time too. So thank you very, very much for that. So for those that are on now, and I know this is recorded, so then we can publish it for the public who weren't able to attend. I just wanted to emphasize how important these meetings are in the participation of all of the residents in Ward 2 as it pertains to today and across the city to voice your thoughts, concerns, opinions. Everything matters. So what's important to one person may not necessarily be important to another, but it is still important to others. So I think it's really important that you voice your opinion and not be afraid or shy about that. It's a judgment-free zone. So we like to take in all information and with a grain of salt. Nobody's going to take anything personally. This is all part of a learning and improvement movement. And there are a lot of things that have been going on in the city that have been positive, and we want to keep that momentum going. And it's ideally, what do we want our city to look like for the next 40 years? What are our aspirations for growth and development in the city? And how do we see our city as in a future? Do we see it as a robust metropolitan type of a city? Is it a family-based city where you can feel comfortable just walking your dogs down the street, or your animals, or your children playing outside? So those are the kind of questions and answers that I'm going to be looking for as we go through this process in making these decisions in the city, especially as they pertain to Ward 2. So with that, I turn it over to our presenter.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Krista will go ahead and provide an overview of the comprehensive plan process, what it is, what it isn't, what the timeline is, and what your role is here tonight. So Krista, if you want to go ahead and walk us through your presentation, then we can go through the schedule of activities for tonight.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to share. Great, so get myself oriented. So our agenda for tonight. So I'm going to do a short overview of the comprehensive plan and our process, and then we're going to have, if we get enough folks that sort of join us tonight, we'll do small breakout groups in virtual rooms, or we'll talk together as a group in this one room. And if we do end up doing breakouts, we'll come back together and to talk about some highlights from our discussions. So I did have a poll set up for this evening. And since we only have a few of us, maybe we can talk, introduce ourselves when we get into our groups. So first I'll start, what is the comprehensive plan? So it is really the shared vision for the city's future, and it's a pathway, guidance on how we're going to get there. And we have a plan so we can protect what we love about the city, so we can target where we can improve and do better, and then really trying to find ways where we can transform and create new opportunities. So a lot of different folks use the comprehensive plan. It's used by local decision makers like the City Council, boards and committees like the Planning Board, Conservation Commission. It's used by the different departments. It's also used by state agencies and private investors. It gives these people and these agencies, let them know how you see your future as a city and where you would like things to happen and what kind of investments that you'd like to see here. And to be a little bit more specific, it's a tool that guides decisions. So around businesses, it helps decisions around supporting business development, retaining businesses. It helps prioritize cities' investments in services and infrastructure. It promotes fairness and equity, so there's access for all opportunities for all residents. It helps focus decisions on development, where it happens, what it looks like, and protects natural areas and historic sites. But really it covers, as the name suggests, a pretty comprehensive list of issues. It talks about traffic, our roads, walking and biking, so how we get around the city, parks, recreation, our neighborhoods, touches on climate change and the impacts of that, impacts of natural hazards. So how do we plan for that in the future? So this is a long-term plan. So we need to sort of think out as we can and try to how these issues may or may not change. And we sort of organize it into three areas. So first we look at where we've been and where we are now. So this is data and trends. The last plan for the city was updated in 2010. So we look at plans and studies and projects that have happened over the last 10 years, and what are the recommendations, what have they said, how do we incorporate those, and really take stock in current needs. Then we decide where we want to go. So this is, are our future needs going to change? This is where we establish a goal, our vision, and the goals to meet that vision, and then how we're going to get there. So this plan does have an action piece to it, specific strategies, they're prioritized, people who are departments, individuals, committees who are responsible advocates for our strategies, and setting up a time frame and when they can get done. So this is our timeline. So we started in the fall, and we've been doing data collection, looking at plans and studies, and really learning about what's happening on the ground in the city. Right now we're listening. So as Councilwoman Souza said, we want to listen and understand what the issues are. How do you see the city's future? And then we're going to take all of that and then come back to you in the summer and kind of present ideas, present strategies, present concepts, and ask you, are these right for the city? Where could we do something different? So really get your feedback on that. And then by the fall, we hope to have a draft plan, and that'll probably be presented in another larger community event. And we'll be asking, did we get this right? What's missing? And that will lead to adoption in the winter. And that comes with public hearings for both approval by the planning board and adoption by the city council. So tonight's discussion, so as Bill talked about, we really we have three focus of our questions. So this is, a 20-year plan. So we want to take stock of what needs to be protected. So our first question is, what needs to be protected for future generations? Then our second question is, what's doing okay, but it needs support or investments to reach its full potential? And then our final question is, what should be transformed or reimagined? This is an opportunity to think big and to really think about what could happen in the next 20 years. And when we ask these questions, it can be a place in the city, it can be a program, it could be a tradition, really anything that contributes to quality of life for residents. And so we're trying to get a lot of insight as we can. And also to, Councilwoman Souza's point, we're here to listen, and we're here to listen to everyone's ideas. So there's we're not trying to get consensus on topics or issues or needs. We want to hear from everyone. So we need to recognize that that's how we're going to go into this. So we want to be sure that, that you understand that. So we do have a few ground rules. So obviously we want to be respectful and be kind and as others share their experiences, we all experience the city in a different way. We have a short amount of time tonight, so we want to be respectful of that. So be concise, think of the headline of your idea. And if you have more to say, there are ways you can reach us and get your ideas. If you have an aha moment after we end tonight, you can still contribute. And we ask that you be open to new ideas. This is an exciting study or project, and it's really kind of forward thinking. So let's think big. What are those new ideas? And then be patient with technology. I think we've been saying that for last year, but we continue to ask for that. So I am just gonna stop sharing my screen and take stock of how many folks we have with us. So Lena, how many, let's see, outside of our team?
We have 9.
9. So I'm wondering if it's worth, maybe we will stay in one group and we'll sort of talk as a group together. I think that would be fine. So what we'll do is, I do have a map, but I'll hold off using that for now. But maybe, so as we'll go through, I know, so we're kind of, not everyone has their screen on. So if you feel comfortable putting on your video, that would be great. And what we'll do is we'll go through those 3 questions, and you know, I can do it as a sort of a round robin. We'll start off that like a roll call vote from, I'll have my list, my participant list up, and I'll just go through and everyone can provide an answer to that question and we'll have a discussion about it. So with that, I will start with our first question. So what needs to be protected in the city? You know, what needs to be here for future generations to appreciate and enjoy? And I'll take a hand wave for someone who wants to volunteer to go first. Anyone? Okay. Councilwoman Souza. And remind yourself, and I appreciate everyone has themselves on mute, but we'll remind you when you haven't put yourself off mute.
I'll be the icebreaker. So
Okay,
for
thank you.
thinking about children and, you know, family for myself, open space and trees and plants and flowers, bees, you know, things, nature for me is important to maintain in our future, not only for aesthetics, but for health reasons. The more trees we have and pollination and that kind of thing, the better health that we'll have. And color brings a lot more joy than, you know, bright colors. Like I love seeing my tulips in the front come this time of the year. They make me very happy versus just my stone wall, which is nice, but it doesn't make me as happy as my tulips do. So that kind of stuff for me is really important in protecting and having and preserving in the city.
So does everyone, do folks kind of agree with that? Or, you know, is there agreement? Yeah. Anything to add? Is there something else? Yes, Renee.
Yeah, I think if I have the lines of the wards correct, I think one of the biggest things for Ward 2 is the waterfront. It's a great asset, but will it still be around in 20 years? Or what will it look like in 20 years? And I think not just Ward 2, but out to the terrace and lots of waterfront in East Providence that we want to make sure is still here for the next generation and the ones that follow.
So by you mean is still here, do you mean access to it or?
Access to it, development that's currently on the waterfront, how do we protect it? And any plans for future development on the waterfront, we need to consider climate change in those development plans so that new development is still here for us in the future.
Folks, the agreement or another idea about what do we need to protect?
Sorry.
Well, I think I saw it. So why don't I'll start. Also, I'll call on Julie, which, and I also will just make a note that that Rose made a comment that she's having difficulty with her camera and microphone, but you know, Rose, if you wanted to type in the chat, I'll read it off for everyone if they can't see it. So we'll start with Julie and then we'll go to Michael.
Hi. I agree with everything that's being said so far for suggestions. I'd also like to bring notice to the historical parts of East Providence. Those historical buildings, our Louvre Carousel, Hunts Mills, all the different places throughout Rhode Island, not just in Ward 2, the historic parts, I think we owe it to our tradition. We also owe it to the future to continue preserving those, so they'll be here for the future, so they'll be here for the children. And it's part of our history. So I think that we can't forget about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I called Michael next.
Yes, I definitely agree with all of that, and want to stress the access to the waterfront, because it's not very easy to get to the waterfront, at least where I am, which is on the Waterman Ave area. There's no easy way to get down there and across the road and over to the river. So that'd be really good.
It's Councilwoman Souza.
So that's interesting that, a couple of people have mentioned this about access to the waterfront. It's something that residents have been talking about over the last, my couple of terms. And one of the things back when we were in the mayor form of government, discussions that had been had was, and I'm sure people are familiar if you've been here for a while, or a lifelong resident, is Crooks Pond. Off of Waterfront Drive. A lot of people, where the trestle is up, that bridge, a lot of people go fishing down there. So, but there is no public access to speak of. People just walk the path, they find the path along the train tracks, and then they walk down there. And it's actually something the fire department, at a meeting that I had with that previous form of government, we had in the fire chief at the time, and some of the captains had said that they would have loved to have an access road, because people are down there and they're using that space. And when fires occur, because people have fires, that they have a hard time getting access to go down that far. And so there was a long discussion about involving potentially in the future the state, because it is part of that is all state property, getting an access road to that beautiful area, so that the public could actually utilize that part of the waterfront and all of that nature in there. So I think that would be a good thing to maybe continue looking into or working on in the future as part of just public access, versus it being real estate that the state or the city is looking to get to sell, but actually something that the community could utilize for their own public use. I think would be pretty amazing.
Thank you. Is there, I see your hand, Renee. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just sort of piggyback on Councilwoman's comments. And I think I would summarize it also using a term that's, very popular right now, which is inclusion, and making sure that the whole community is included in access to the waterfront, not just those of us who might live nearby and have special access to the waterfront, but that the whole community is included in the design and the thought process for access to the wonderful waterfront that East Providence has. So I think I would use that word to summarize what Councilwoman, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, I apologize. But
no, you're just adding to it. I mean, that's part of this, is we can add to each other.
I think anything is always inclusive, whether, I love going to Savins Point and the beach down there, and I do a few beach cleanups because I think it's a beautiful place to be and it's a beautiful access that we have. I would just like it all the way up if we can, any part along our city, any coastline that we can utilize, and that's a perfect spot to utilize, where it's people in Rumford don't have to go all the way to the end of Riverside to utilize that.
Yep.
Put a boat ramp over there where we can also, like our neighbors across the river, they put together a nice boat ramp along the bike path, and that went up in, I think it seemed like 6 months or less that they were able to put that boat ramp and dock, and people in the community all over use that. And I'd like for us in East Providence to be able to utilize that across the board, because though we love over our, my tongue's twisted right now about it, Bull Point Park, that isn't sufficient enough. You know, that space itself needs to be revamped and I think worked on more, but something bigger and additional too. So for everybody to use.
So for folks who haven't, I haven't called on yet, or I didn't know if is there anyone else who has some ideas about protection? You know, we haven't, if there's someone else who hasn't spoken yet, had an idea or wanted to build on something that was already said. Okay. Is there anything else? So we have open space and trees and natural areas. We have the waterfront to be protected, talking about access, the historic parts of the city, the different buildings, the carousel, all of those places and the traditions. Anything else that needs to be protected? Yep, Julie.
Well, I suppose this might lead into question number 2, something
That's
that
fine.
needs support. And I have to say, full disclosure, because of a toddler, I'm actually in Ward 1, but I missed last week's meeting. So
That's okay.
take my
Yeah,
comments with a grain of salt, but
no, and actually we can talk about citywide issues too.
okay, thank
It's
you. I live very close. I can echo with the toddler. I bike almost constantly. We only have one car between my partner and I. And so I can echo the need for access to bikeability across the city. But I was gonna say, as far as protection, I think public services absolutely need to be protected. Things like the libraries, what an amazing resource, especially I think during the pandemic. We have absolutely realized how vital those kinds of resources are. And so, you know, again, echoing Councilwoman's comments about public spaces and being able to have access to outdoor spaces, even if we don't have our own outside space, those public spaces have become so important. And I think for future generations with impending climate crisis, those are going to become even more important. So library, I'm going to put a word out for public libraries.
No, and I think, and to that point, I think we've all over the last year have sort of the delivery of how we access city services has sort of changed over the last year. And, you know, that may revolutionize going forward. Like, we don't know. So that's some of the questions we might ask. So if, you know, if there was any thoughts about, you know, how the library or, you know, senior center services or, you know, police and like all of that is really, you know, sort of part of this conversation. So we do talk about city services as well. Recreation, parks, we all sort of realize the importance of outdoor space in a different perspective too. So very important. Anybody else have a comment or suggestion or an idea that we can, I did put a little pin, Julie, about bikes, and we can come back to that too, about bike access. Anyone I can call on? I don't know if Sarah, if you have anything you want to add. I don't mean to put you on. Oh, yes. Someone.
I'm Tony.
Hi, I'm sorry, you are at the library, I think, right?
Yes, I am. That's correct.
Your name, sir?
Tony Shepherd.
Tony Shepherd. I'm gonna update your name. And I apologize if I spell it wrong.
I'm the one that sits on the hill with the sheep. You can't go wrong with that. Actually, I don't need to wear a mask, do I? Because you're not gonna, are you gonna stay right there?
We do have to keep the mask on.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna step away.
Okay, you must be at home then. And you are?
So my name is Krista. So we are talking about what is important in East Providence that should be protected.
Okay,
And we were asking everyone for their ideas. Do you have something that you feel?
yes, I do.
The
and
20
I've been working on it since 2014. I've given it to several of the mayors. I'm still waiting for a response from the Mayor De Silva. But my project, and it is a project, is fresh water for East Providence. When I was young, I grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Lawrence takes its drinking water directly from the Merrimack River. Right now, we are taking our water in East Providence from the Situate Reservoir by way of Providence and the BCWA, whatever, it's Bristol County Water Association or something, which has control of the price and control of flow. I brought a map with me because I thought this was actual, not virtual.
Okay,
If you were to look on a map between where Waterman Avenue ends at the Seekonk River and directly across the river where the building of Richmond Square is, there are two cement walls on either side where the road used to cross the river. If you constructed a dam right there to a height of 6 feet, you would back up the Seekonk River, which would be fresh water because you would stop the tidal water from coming up the bay. You'd create a reservoir, and if you put in a desalination and water purification plant on the banks of the East Providence side of the Waterfront Drive and create a brand new facility, we would have unlimited drinking water with an unlimited supply and a modern, up-to-date system rather than updating the ones that over the years have sunk $15 million into, which still need work.
so Tony, I think you've jumped ahead a few questions for us. So our third question of the evening would be what needs to be transformed? So you've just told us our water supply transformation project. We will.
A major project, but there's several reasons for it. First of all, the riverbanks are at least 6 feet high, all the way back to the waterfall in Pawtucket. So there's no need to build up anything other than possibly the river road on the Providence side, right over east side. The rest of that, the river all the way up has 6 foot high banks. The second thing is we're talking about stimulus money for the, excuse my rambling mind, but we're talking about stimulus money to the grants right now, which is sinking into highways, but infrastructure is covered and it will be greatly reduced by federal money. And it's a perfect time to take this responsibility on. It's unfortunate we have a $186 million high school we're paying for, but the water is something that's necessary. It's the absolute basic requirement. And we have a very old system and we're relying on other people for the system.
Yep, and we will. So we've got that idea. So tonight we're just putting out ideas about, what needs to be protected, what needs investment, and what needs to be transformed for the city for the next 20 years. So
Correct.
that really is an idea that falls into both investments and transformation. Thank you for that. And
Well,
so,
first, excuse me, a little background. Are you just a private citizen or are you related? Are you involved with?
right, so you
politics of
joined
the
a little
city?
late, I understand. So I was hired by my firm, Horsley Witten Group. So we were hired by the city to help them do their comprehensive plan update. So that is a 20-year long-term plan. So we're working with the planning department and some of the staff folks are here today. So this is a workshop that we're listening about community needs and community issues to help update that plan. So the plan was last updated in about 10 years ago. So that's.
I lost you, you froze.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Shepherd. My name is Anna Souza. I'm the councilwoman here in Ward 2. I thank you for joining us tonight at the library, one of the community's most important resources that we just spoke about. So thank you for being there and utilizing the services that they provide to the residents. I think what you're mentioning is an absolutely intriguing conversation that I would love to further discuss with you whenever you have time available, or with a group of other city officials that work for the city to see and hear more about it. I think it's an innovative plan, and I'd like to learn or hear more about it and see, what we could do with that type of information.
Anna, would you spell your last name for me, please?
Sousa.
I'm sorry, I used to attend all the city meetings and I gave them up because they're frustrating. So I understand you are now a city council member. I see your name, but I've never met you. It was very nice to meet you. I
Likewise,
have a
sir.
letter which I brought, and I would be happy to mail that to you for the basic information that's in it. I've tried several times to get a hold of the city hall, and something needs updating. It's the city hall webpage. It's full of.
And I think they actually just did. So I think maybe if the next time you check it out, they did update it recently.
The
So
only person I can reach is
it'll
city hall.
function a little bit better for you.
Who transfers me somewhere else who goes dead. So I've had no luck at all getting a hold of the mayor. And I gave up a long time ago trying to get a hold of the Waterfront committee with Mr. Fazioli. I've never had any luck attending any of their meetings. I sound disgruntled, but I'm just grunchy, that's all.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shepherd. We appreciate your telling us your idea. So sharing it with the group. We could, if you wanted to, you brought information there to the library, perhaps there could be some coordination to pick it up if you wanted to.
Well, I could leave it here at the library if this, I would just put her name on it.
Yeah, that would work fine. I'm 2 streets away from the library, so I can certainly.
I'm
take a
not going to
look
change
there.
the heading on it. It was written to me at De Silva.
Okay.
So just for Anna, for Miss Souza on it. How's
That's
that?
fine. Thank you.
So Mr. Shepherd, we're gonna move on to,
Can I just ask, Mr. Shepherd, could you just leave your contact information too, so I can touch base with you?
That's on the envelope. That's on the
Perfect.
letter.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
thank you, Councilwoman, I appreciate that. So,
Okay.
Mr. Shepherd, we're gonna ask some, finish going around the horn, asking what other folks' ideas are.
Great.
Appreciate it, thank you. And I'm just, so I think someone had a hand up before, was it, I don't know, Sarah or Stephanie? I want to give everyone a chance before we go on to the next topic. No?
Well,
Okay.
just
Oh,
to
yes.
kind of address the group a little bit. I'm just loitering on this meeting. Actually, I work for One Neighborhood Builders, and we have 2 projects in East Providence right now. So I was really just listening in to see what the residents felt was the important to take into consideration while updating the comprehensive plan. So, which is why I'm kind of just sitting back and not speaking, because this is, I don't live in East Providence. So, so I'm really just listening to hear what everybody else has to say. And the 2 projects that I have going in are both affordable housing and are both strongly supported by the city themselves. So if anyone has any questions about the projects I'm working on, I'd be happy to answer them. But I'm just going to sit back and listen in.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I did not go around and ask folks to introduce themselves. I apologize for that. But I will make note, and maybe after we kind of go through our exercise, if folks had questions for Stephanie, we could do that. So I think what I'll do is, and we can always come back if you have an idea. So I think what we can move on to the next question. So what's doing okay, but it needs some support. It needs something to help it thrive, really kind of make it see its full potential. Is there a place or just sort of a, Julie had mentioned, bikeability, being able to bike, that's an example where it's there, it's something, but it could be better. And sort of how could it be better? What kind of investments might we be looking for? Anyone have, I'll take a hand wave. Who would like to go first? So is that, did I see Michael or, well, good, Sarah. Why don't Sarah, let's give Sarah, why don't you tell us what your,
Hi, I am I guess, relatively new by comparison resident. I moved here about, I think it'll be 3 years in July. And I'm originally from the Midwest, and I have been enjoying East Providence because it reminds me in many ways of some of the things I love and miss about the Midwest. I love the neighborhood and feel and how everyone is kind of in everyone's business, lovingly or not so lovingly. I'm very used to that. That's how I grew up. But I agree with, reason I was quiet for the first question is everyone hit all the things that I already agree with, like the nature and historical sites, etc. But for number 2 things, from my very brief time here that I think need some support, there's a couple of things. So one is, it's a nice segue, affordable housing. Another one is the walkability / bikeability. My partner and I, we have a car right now, but we usually don't have a car. And we're able to get around. It's kind of amazing how well we are able to get around. But walkability and bikeability are definitely some concerns. Like there's a couple intersections near us that we don't even like crossing on foot, that are a little bit, you know, high pressure, I guess you could say. And then the third thing is disability access or accessibility. And that can mean a number of different things. Personally, I'm hard of hearing, so it would have been, it's my fault because I didn't say anything, but like it would be great to have, if you're having a meeting on Zoom, to have the closed captions enabled for people. I noticed in the winter, a lot of times like the curb cuts, they're like plowed through. And so if you're in a wheelchair, even though there's a curb cut, get there, like you couldn't even use it. Things like that, I think could use a little more support, I guess.
right, yep. Do you mind if I ask what intersections that you are, you're concerned with?
Yeah, so the main one actually is Warren and like South/North Broadway right there. And I actually think a pedestrian was killed there within the last year and a half, 2 years, okay. About time, 2 pedestrians or 2 years? 2 years. Okay, all right. And like my partner and I, we do actually everything we can to avoid that intersection, even though it's like we should be going through it like all the time. Even walking through it is dangerous. It just feels like a constant game of Frogger, even if you're in a car. It's
right.
It's not predictable. I think people's behaviors aren't predictable. And then
it's right near the intersection from, or the off-ramp, on-ramp from the highway. Is that, so
yeah,
it's
it's
a
right
different
near
mentality there as well of drivers.
It's right near the on-ramp and before the, I guess, one of the off-ramp. Oh yeah, I guess the off-ramp in one direction, correct. And then another intersection is right near my house. It's the intersection of Grosvenor and John. And it's a 4-way stop, but there's like a lot of times that people, I don't know, maybe it's just a general pandemic, like, I don't know, people have kind of lost their sense of like how to be in traffic, but there's like a school right there and a church is right there. And I think a lot of times people don't stop, they do the whole like just go through. And if you're on a bike, you wouldn't have enough time to stop. So I don't know, increasing visibility of things like that, improving safety.
Yeah. And so you made a comment about affordable housing. Just, could you explain that a little bit more? It just in general affordability, is that?
Yeah, so, I mean, one thing that I noticed moving here, so I moved here from Brookline, Massachusetts, which is like, I was a renter there. Super, super expensive place to live. And they're like going into almost paralysis trying to deal with affordable housing, because there's a lot of issues with people who grew up there. They've hung on to their homes, but like no new housing is being built. And they're running into issues with like mixed use of retail and residential. And I think that even though it's not that like that here, I think that it's something that's really important to create a place where people can find housing, whether they're renting, whether they're owning, whether they're subsidized or not subsidized, whether we like live somewhere that we can also do business in. Like those things to me create a community and encourage diversity, which are very important to me personally. I don't know if they're important to everyone else, but they are to me. And so that matters to me, that like people can move here and live here and be happy here and contribute.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything they want to add to what Sarah talked about, or something new about something that needs support? Yes, Mr. Shepherd. I think you have to unmute. You have to unmute yourself, sir.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. On the subject of the biking, and it's a little more comprehensive than that, but East Providence is 7 miles long, 1.5 miles wide. It's a very unusual city. It only has 3 major roads going through it. And in most of those places, the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. There's very few places that are more than 25 miles an hour in East Providence. We spent quite a bit of money on sidewalks, but if you drive around, you'll see there are very few people walking on sidewalks. And I had proposed before to the city council that if they would take 2 of the 4 sidewalks, north and west or south and east, either way, and convert them to bike paths with associated signage, you'd be getting use out of the sidewalks, and the sidewalks are still there for pedestrians, but they get the bicycles off of the road, which have no bike paths. Very few of them have a bike path. I'm a biker myself. I was up to 2 years ago. And Mr. Kudo, who was at that time, the highway patrol, highway supervisor, used to get a kick out of seeing me all over town riding the bikes. And I would ride on the sidewalks. And the lady is quite correct on the crosswalks, because they're not identified as crosswalks in most places. But anyway, it would create usage for the sidewalks and get the bicycles off of the roads, because we don't have a way to widen our roads. We're old-fashioned. Our roads can't be, there's no way to widen them.
There's no room. There's no room.
So make usage of the sidewalks and posting with the signage on the road itself for bicycles. And it wouldn't hurt to have maximum, as you come into town in any of the roads, to have it posted for 25 miles an hour throughout the town. There's no place you can go, you're going to lose more than 2 minutes. So I think cap the speed limit at 25 miles an hour in town. It sounds radical, but it really isn't. It's almost there now. Enough for me. Somebody else.
Thank you. Does anyone else have, where's our support or for new investments are needed? Yes, Michael.
It'd be great to have support in jumping on the walkability part. So like in the Waterman Ave area, there's a bunch of sort of disparate small businesses and a lot of empty spaces and then an empty lot. And it would be nice to have sort of a comprehensive plan that gives support to small businesses to be able to come in and renovate that area to bring in businesses for the neighborhood people to be able to walk and utilize those areas, those businesses in that area.
I'm gonna echo what Michael said, and just with the comment that you know, Sarah, we're also very new to the East Coast. We moved here from the West about 3 years ago, and we moved to Rumford just for a little bit more space from a rental in Providence. But I don't think we've felt like we have enough in East Providence to get us to stay in East Providence, if that makes sense, as far as like if we're going to do something as a family, or if my partner and I are lucky enough to go out alone together. We always find ourselves going to East Providence. So investing really and bringing those small businesses that would allow us to just have opportunity to, you know, be a part of the community, in the sense of, you know, I don't think East Providence has an independent bookstore. Am I correct in that? I'm not sure. We haven't found one, but you know, something as far as literary events or art events, something, I know that we have a few festivals outside in the summertime, but kind of that year-round investment in local shops or local restaurants that would keep us from taking our lives into our own hands, going across the Henderson Bridge on bicycles. And I know that's a project that's being updated, but yeah.
We have a small independent bookshop on Taunton Avenue, probably going back about 10 years. And unfortunately, it struggled, and that's a problem, right? You want to be able to have kind of things like that make life more interesting for the town and people that live in the city, you know.
Yeah.
That's great. So, Renee, did you want to?
Yeah, just as I'm hearing Julie and Sarah talk about their experiences being new to East Providence and even new to the state, I feel like, you know, there's Rumford and Riverside and Kent Heights, and I don't know if there's a way to make us more cohesive as opposed to these very, I think, very distinct neighborhoods. I mean, you never hear it. People don't say they live in East Providence. They say they live in Rumford or Riverside. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm not sure, but there's a reason people do that. And maybe there's something that could be done to make it more of a cohesive. And I think the bikeability is part of that. I don't think there's a good connection between the neighborhoods, between Rumford to getting from Rumford to Riverside. I live in Riverside and I go to the gym in Rumford and I take my bicycle and I have to weave. I'm not going to do the intersection that Sarah mentioned. So I take Waterfront Drive and then I go to Dexter and then I come out on North Broadway, and it's hard to connect the two neighborhoods.
Yep. Do you think that it's a Rhode Island thing too, when they say they're from a specific?
It could be, you know, I don't know, but maybe if we were more connected,
yes, but that is a valid point.
And all of that could help. It's probably some of what you're saying too, but no, I don't know, just thinking true. About it as Sarah and Julie were speaking, but.
I think a lot of that comes with the biking and accessibility. And I think we starting with the Henderson Bridge, in that area being redone, where not only are people from the east side being able to come over and enjoy East Providence, but also hoping that it connects, much like the path does on that side of the river, it connects along our waterfront. So if we start in Rumford and maybe figure out a way to connect to Pawtucket, but connect Rumford through a bike path down Waterfront Drive, connect to First Street to our bike path, which then connects us to Riverside and various places in Riverside. I know my boys, they get on the bike path and they make the stops in Riverside along the bike path, as do many people. But we need those stops. We need that connectability through these bike paths or, you know, pedestrian walkways that are going to get people from point A to point B, and then maybe have cafes or bookstores or art galleries. And I know that's the overall idea that we're looking to do, because down near the Wachamoket Square, we're trying to transform that whole area into an arts district where we can bring in, with some of those empty spaces, people who are involved in the arts, whether it's painting, sculpting, dance, yoga, you know, multiple form, music, whatever form of art. So I think really it's the city doing its part, and I know they probably are in the background that we're maybe not aware of trying to bring people from the outside, draw them into our city, so that they want to do it, and want to be here and see us as a successful community where they, you know, can thrive in their business, and that the community will enjoy that. So I think it's the culture. There might have been a time frame where the culture in East Providence just didn't lend for that, and that's why those small businesses maybe didn't succeed as well. But I think that we're turning that corner in East Providence, with new and vibrant generations emerging and people coming from different parts of the country into our city. So I think the future is brighter. We just want to meet those needs. And so again, that's why I thank you for giving your opinions and your ideas and your wants for the community, because these are the things that then we can look to try to attract into the city to be successful and provide you with those services as a community.
There is an East Providence Art Council now that I think is very much trying to sort of build that relationship and build that sense of the art community in the city as well. So it's something we would want to talk about, you know, incorporate into some of these ideas. So so Mr. Shepherd, I think you had your hand up. I know Julie had her hand up too, but I saw yours up first. Yeah, and then and that is the right. And so if you wanted to, did you have a comment?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. I want to mention another thing for the city, but before I do, I'm not sure if the lady who lives in Rumford and takes the bike path across the Henderson is aware of the beautiful bike path on the Washington Bridge. There's no hill involved going into downtown Providence, and you wind up down through India Park, which is a very nice ride. And I understand I wouldn't use the Henderson Bridge either, but for city improvements and for income and for availability, I did write an article about using the bay, which is the #1 resource that we have, is the bay. And there are intercoastal cruise ships that make tours. And they used to come up to India Park, and you could take the ferry to Block Island. They don't do that anymore.
No.
But if East Providence were to build a pier and use Bold Point as a just debark point and bring in cruise ships, which it's a dug channel the whole way, there's nothing required there, we would pick up the tourism for Providence, the shuttle business from East Providence over to Providence. You would pick up hotel business, and all of the businesses would profit from the tourism of visiting intercoastal ships if we gave them a place to land.
That's the first time I've heard that idea, so thank you.
Okay.
Julie, did you want to?
Just to follow up, yes, Tony, we use the India Point pathway quite a bit. So thank you for that reminder. We're excited to have 2 access points when the Henderson Bridge is redone. I just, you know, cognizantly aware of looking at faces, I think I wanted to make the caveat from an earlier comment that I made that I think it's important to hold both ideas at once, that, you know, we're talking about improvements and we're talking about grand ideas, but also with that comes the dirty word of gentrification. And, you know, it goes with what Sarah was saying earlier. How do we balance the 2 ideas of thinking in a visual or in a futuristic perspective, but also holding at the same time that what Julie was saying earlier with preservation of space, but also preservation of culture and preservation of communities that have been here for a long time. So speaking as a white gentrifier in a lot of regards, I just, I wanted to be cognizant of that as we're thinking about these. And you know, bookstores are great, but if they come at the price of pushing people out of affordable housing or outside of the bounds of community, then I think we have greater issues that we need to solve. So I just wanted to say that before we went any further.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Is there anyone? So we are at 8 o'clock and I want to make sure we get to our third question. Is there anyone wanted to add? Again, you can always get back in touch with us if you have some more ideas. But with that, so we'll move on to the next question, our last one. So this one is our transformation, reimagine. Where does that happen? What does it look like? What are the big ideas? This is, 20 years out. If you went and came back, what would you hope to see in East Providence? So I see Renee.
I guess I'm using the term green development, and I know Stephanie, you said you were from One Neighborhood Builders, and I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, I know at least one of your projects where you are taking some existing structures and renovating them for the affordable housing, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Yes, you're nodding. So, and I would.
Are you referring to Sutton Place?
I don't know, the one on Taunton Avenue. Isn't there one on?
No, we're not involved in the one on Taunton.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. Anyway,
okay.
I would love to see a downtown, a neighborhood, whether it's Riverside Square, that's more of a village feel. And I know that there is one developer trying to do some magic there, or getting, is it Taunton Avenue or Warren Avenue back to how it used to be. So it's the thoroughfare of the city. And we don't really have a downtown. What would you say is downtown East Providence? I don't think there is one. And reusing some of those buildings versus trying to build new developments. So I guess green development or reuse of existing tired structures that currently exist in the city.
But downtown, and is there anywhere you were thinking? I mean, I know you said Riverside Square, which is its own piece.
Yeah, I see that more of as a community village versus a city downtown. So I'm thinking like, I see what Cafe Zara did on Taunton Avenue, which is awesome. And he draws, I don't know where all those people come from, but it's constantly
usually
busy.
When you think of a city center or downtown, City Hall's there, it's sort of the center of civic life. There's the library, there's the post office.
Right. The problem is there's too much traffic on that street, but that's a
cut. Right. So Taunton Avenue is taking traffic off the highway into Massachusetts. They kind of use that as a.
Yeah, I don't know how we get around what 195 did to the city, right? It's basically looking at what 195 did to East Providence and how can we work around that. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a planner, but that destroyed the downtown, right? That broke up East Providence forever. And how do we work around that 195 dilemma?
Right. And when Julie and Sarah were bringing up biking, north and south, and how difficult, and even, Mr. Shepherd, that the creation of 195, that putting that highway right through the middle of the city clearly had that impact. I've been looking at some of the materials for Wachamoket Square, and they show Wachamoket Square, but most of it's not there anymore because it's the highway. So trying to recreate that and build that. So maybe there's opportunities to build those connections, looking at 195. There are some overpasses, some of the roads that go over, maybe there's, I know there's some new ramps that are going to be part of, that are proposed to connect off of that exit area. I don't know how we can look, relook at that to see how that might impact if that moves traffic away or what have you from that that area, if their destination is somewhere else. But yeah, that's a bit of a tough nut, but it's an interesting one. It's an important area of the city. And the bus, RIP to bus goes through there. So there are some connections that can be made. Yeah, I see Councilwoman Souza.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think would be the city needs to improve and transform is something I've been discussing for a number of years, and actually have been in contact with the state about, and they were on board, but everything takes funding, was as it pertains to the downtown area or the coming into East Providence. I see that corridor as our city's downtown, since it's the entrance and the gateway to the city, that Six Corners, when they redid that whole section in that area and made one ways, it really hurt a lot of the businesses in that area. And essentially what happens is, because people are traveling at a decent speed, not the 25 that's marked in that area, and they're going to connect to 44. So a lot of our cut through travelers going to Seekonk, people miss some of those restaurants and those businesses. And then there's really no real good way to wrap around to get back to them. GPS confuses a lot of out of city visitors to the city. The one way, because people get lost, there's a lot of wrong way driving that occurs in that Six Corners section of the city. And I personally have almost had a couple of head-on collisions because of wrong way drivers coming up Taunton Avenue, because they don't know how to get back on to Taunton Avenue to get to where City Hall is, to then jump back on the highway. So one of the proposals many years ago, it's probably maybe 15, I would say, years ago, or a little bit less, was that they were going to make that back into an intersection as it once was. At the time, probably a good 7 years ago, the discussion was to, with the governor at the time's incentives of roundabouts, potentially having a rotary. That section turned into a road where then you could access all 6 corners of that intersection. So you could go north or south towards Broadway, which again, people they try to get to the nursing facility, Lynn Healthcare, and they are lost. They don't know how to get to Broadway from Taunton Avenue. And then getting, back and forth on Taunton Ave. So I think part of our comprehensive plan, I personally would like to see how we can incorporate a transformation in that area. I think it would bring a lot of livelihood to the businesses in that area. That was a very robust area, decades ago in the city. And since they've changed that traffic pattern, things aren't sustained well over there. And there's a lot of traffic safety issues and pedestrian safety issues in that area. So for me on C, that would be where I would see a transformation and improvement in Ward 2.
Comments or another transformation or reimagine? And it can be citywide. We can venture. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Shepherd.
All right, on Taunton Avenue, what was originally the high school, which I don't know what it is now. I don't know if it's an apartment house or a nursing home or what it is. It's on the right at the corner of
Taunton Avenue, the plaza, Taunton Avenue Plaza. It's affordable. It's low-income housing, disability.
What it is? Okay, I was thinking that is part of what's taking up the downtown area of the Taunton Avenue. I agree with you about the roundabout or straightening out the 6-way and going back so the Taunton Avenue is a straight shot, and what's now Waterman becomes Taunton Avenue, and what's Taunton now becomes 2 parallel streets so that you can build up a business. That would be one of the things that would have to be just displaced, not replaced, to be able to widen it. That would be some type of a, as they're talking about eminent domain for the golf course, that would have to be that type of a displacement, I believe. But that would become the downtown area. That essentially is the heart of downtown East Providence right now, although it's very spread out. It's not a concentrated downtown. It's starting right across from City Hall now. There's a nice little coffee shop. There's a health shop. There's a print shop. There's several little businesses there.
Yep.
And there's the square where the theater used to be. So that area could be developed into downtown all the way up through Taunton Avenue by getting rid of that crazy six-corner setup. And that would be a long-range project that would
For
consider
sure.
downtown.
Definitely.
What's
Thank
interesting
you.
is that the state had acquired funding and came to the council at the time to have that redone, and the council didn't have an appetite during, and this is nothing that's within the last 10 or 15 years, but the council didn't have an appetite at the time while there was funding and the state wanted to do it, because you do need state consensus. It is a state road within the city, but there were plans, there were blueprints, I've seen them. So it's interesting that then the state wanted to do it and thought it was important, and the city at the time didn't have the appetite. And now I think it's probably pretty essential, for the future of the city in that area to succeed for those businesses, or we're just going to end up seeing more storefronts.
I think at this particular point, with the stimulus money that's available and the current administration, which seems to be more forward-looking than previously, it would be a good time to start a serious conversation about that.
Yep, that's a great idea. And we have about 15 minutes left. So I know Julie had something that she wanted to add. So I'm gonna make sure that she's able to share her idea.
Hi, yes.
Hi.
Years ago, the downtown was Waterfront Square. That was our downtown of East Providence. And you're right, with the construction of the highway and everything, that took our downtown away. And now Taunton Avenue, the revitalization of it, and hopefully the continued revitalization of it, which I would love to see continued, would be a great thing, to see. But also, I think you're talking future projects like coming in. I want to see that rec center built. I want to see the complex over at the senior center to be utilized and what it was supposed to be back when it was first built. I want to see the waterfront, as it was already mentioned, utilized from Rumford to Riverside. I think it's great that we do have the segregated areas as far as telling the history of it. Like there's Phillipsdale, there's Rumford, there's Suttonville, there's Kent Heights. Like if you go to the history of East Providence, there's all different areas of East Providence, but we are all East Providence. Just having those areas, some people forget that we are East Providence. I grew up in Ward 2. Ward 2 is the center of the city, but we're East Providence. We don't have another name to call it. It's East Providence. And we have a lot of potential. I'd love to see a lot of the empty buildings repurposed, reused, reinvented. I'm very excited to see what's going to come out of the art district and the fact that we're going to have an art district. So I see the big plans, and I think that the comprehensive plan just needs to include, this is supposed to be the place where we want to work, we want to live, we want to play. And we need to focus on those things, making sure our parks are at standard, making sure that they're accessible, handicap accessibility is there at all, if not all our parks, but the majority of them. So there's inclusion and everybody can play together. Making sure that the history is preserved. I still don't know what they're going to do with the old clock tower in front of the high school. I don't think its plans are for it to stay there, but I'm hoping that it's going to be moved. If it has to go, that it's going to be moved someplace else in our city, because that's part of our history. And there's just little things that might not mean much to people that are new in the area, but I think once they learn about them, they would cherish them just as much as we do, being townies that have been here our entire lives. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yep, Julie, I saw you.
Yeah, could I speak to that? Because Julie, as you were talking, it got me. So I'm going to put out maybe a huge controversial thing, but as if we're imagining, I imagine 40 years down the road, East Providence being a car decentered city, meaning that we give access to public transportation, we give access to like ride shares or, wheelchair accessible ride shares, that kind of thing, bike, pedestrian. As Julie was talking, I was thinking how neat it would be as a new person like myself to have a historic tour of East Providence, something that I could bike to or even take public transportation and have a printed tour of all of these historical markers. I don't know half of those places that you're talking about, Julie, but it gets me very excited. Like that's something that's a family-centered activity. That's something that brings place to a community. And so, yeah, I think, somewhere, just to echo, somewhere where you can work, live, and play, but you're able to access and interchange all of those in ways where you don't have to get into a car. And we know that climate change is happening and we're probably going to have to, cut down our emissions significantly. And so what are the other ways that we can think about staying more local, staying more sustainable within the communities where we live, work, and play? And so that would be my grand vision. If my son is to grow up in East Providence and be a townie, we love that term. But if he is to grow up and be a townie, then we want him to be able to get on his bicycle and go to a friend's house across town or go to downtown. And we as parents feel safe that he's able to get there and back. Well-lit streets, easy to cross, easy to navigate. Places where, if there are cars on the road, they're very, very aware and they're very limited within certain spaces that he knows he can work around. So anyway, that's it. Thank you, Julie, for sharing those names. I'm going to now look those up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the stuff you're sharing, because what your vision too will preserve a lot of our city. So I think together with all of our minds adding to this project, I think we can really make East Providence exactly what we're all visioning it to be.
I hope that was hopefully what I was hoping you would get out of this today. I know it's difficult via Zoom, but perhaps in the fall when we come back together, we can have a different situation. But did anybody have anything else that they wanted to comment? Or so Tony, I'm going to go with Sarah first.
Okay,
and then we'll come back.
I'll be really quick. I just want to kind of piggyback on Julie Squared, their comments. We went to Pierce Field for the first time, 2 days ago, maybe. And I'm the geek that always reads all the plaques and like, this is in memorial to this and this commemorates this event. And I love that. So I love the idea of having like some kind of East Providence historic self-guided tour or something like that. But one thing, I'm not sure where this fits, but one thing we noticed is that like the two like pillars like on either side of the gate to Pierce Field, there are like it looks like something's missing. Like there's two empty frames or shadow boxes, or like something was there, and one of the light bulbs like doesn't have like the fixture over it. It's just kind of like hanging there by a wire. And it was kind of a bummer to me, because I'm like, well, this feels like this place was created for people to come to and kind of be like a center of the community. And there's like 2 or 3 memorial plaques there, but then this like, it just kind of looked a little decrepit and like an afterthought. So my point is that while I would love this like historic thing, like we need to also keep it up, and we need to go to it and attend it and make it a living thing that we maintain.
Thank you very much. So Tony, we have a few minutes. Did you have a comment that you wanted to, or an idea? I can't. Did you want to unmute? So you are on mute. So did anyone, well, he's working the technology. Was there anyone else who wanted to add? We have about 9 minutes left.
Okay. Okay.
So Tony, and then we'll go to Renee.
I want to ask Ms. Souza, please do not let the city put in parking meters. That is one of the things in East Providence, that there's no parking places, and small businesses would suffer if they start to put in parking meters for the small revenue they would pay back. It would kill businesses. That's all.
Made a note. Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. It was very
Thank you. So Renee, I can give you the last word.
Oh, it's a little information for Julie and Sarah. The East Providence Historical Society, on their website, they have a great walking tour of like Watchamacket Square and down by the waterfront of some houses that still remain with beautiful architecture, and it's a walking tour. It takes you across Taunton Avenue. It's really interesting, and you see some houses that have been around for a while, and Councilwoman is nodding. It's a great walking tour. So I just thought I'd throw that out for you newcomers. It's very fun.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any final thoughts, or, if there were any other ideas that came up for any of our other questions that you wanted to throw out there? Yep, Stephanie.
One Neighborhood Builders was actually designated developer for the old Bamco jewelry site, which is right on Bullocks Place and Fenner Avenues. And I've walked this street many, many times by myself, and I actually would love to see something down by the carousel that draws people down Bullocks Point Avenue, and not just the bike path which runs behind Bullocks Point Avenue. Because there are a lot of empty storefronts on Bullocks Point, and it would just be nice to get something that actually draws people all the way to the other end. It's just something I've noticed, that there's no draw to actually get people to drive down Bullocks Point Avenue unless they just have somewhere they're going down there. And I think it would help revitalize that whole area.
Yeah, Riverside is, you don't really go there unless you live there. Like, it's not.
Right, and I know there is a private developer, Rory. Yeah, there's a private developer, Rory Miller, who's actually doing an entire square block. But I do think that if there was another business on the other end, whether it be a really great restaurant down, the carousel, which would bring people to the parks down there as well. I think it just needs something to draw people to drive down Bullocks Point Avenue, because everyone's utilizing the bike path, but that's not Bullocks Point Avenue. it cuts off behind it, so.
The clam shack will open and everyone will be down there. All right. So Tony, oh, he's leaving. Okay.
Hi, Tony. I'll see you, buddy.
So with that, I thank you all for taking your time tonight. Our next steps are just to continue through our meetings. Did everyone take the survey that was available? So we're working on pulling out that together. We had about 340 responses. So we're sorting through that. And our hope is to come back to you in the summer sort of with different ideas, perhaps topic oriented. So you'll be hearing from us again. You can just visit the website. We have a project website where you registered. So we'll be posting information there as well. Any questions?
Excuse me, Krista. If we do have any questions or want to get information to you, should we email Bill Fazoli or
Yes.
do we get you directly?
You can email Bill. He's the planning director and he will get them to me.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for everyone. Your feedback is really great to hear. And a lot of the things you mentioned, we're working on in the planning department, actually. So it's great to hear that we have a kind of an idea of what is important to you is important to us. And we are working towards revitalizing those commercial corridors that could use some help. Access to the waterfront. We're looking at improving bike lanes. In fact, we'll have a bike lane project coming in later this spring. So we understand exactly what you're talking about, and it's helpful for us to know that we're focusing on things that are important to you as well.
Great.
Thank you for these sessions. They're really, it's good.
Great. And we have one next week. So if folks couldn't join us tonight, they can join us either next week or on the 22nd. So let everyone know.